Hello, traveller. Tonight you won't be battling dragons or watching kings dine on golden platters. You won't be exploring haunted castles or deciphering ancient curses. Instead, you'll be counting coins. Yes, thousands of them, one by one, carefully, quietly, repetitively. It's the 14th century. You are summoned not to fight, but to count. The king has wealth mountains of it, allegedly, but he needs to know exactly how much. There are no spreadsheets, no calculators, not even a decent ledger system, unless the scribe's ink hasn't run dry. The king wants certainty. So you are sent to the treasury, locked in with wooden chests, dim candlelight, and the weight of metal clinking endlessly into piles. The room is quiet except for the subtle creaks of the wooden floor and the metallic whisper of coins sliding against one another. Some are as dull as stone, others shine like captured stars, but each must be touched, counted, verified. You are not a noble. You are not a knight. You are something far more dangerous in the kingdom, an accountant with a sharp eye and a long list. So before you settle into this story, before we dig into dust, silver fraud, and medieval math, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Of course, you're not required to. We're not feudal lords after all. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is there. It's always fun to see who's joining us from across the modern world, especially as we slip into this one that's long gone. Now dim the lights. Let the noise outside your room fade into silence. Maybe turn on a fan for that gentle background hum. Find a position that feels right, because we're going back in time not to rule a kingdom, but to count it. The chest before you groans as it opens. You stare inside. Hundreds, perhaps thousands of coins stare back. All different sizes, different faces, some dented, some shiny, all whispering the same question: are you ready? You pick up the first coin. It's heavy, solid, silver maybe. The king's face is stamped on it, but it's worn. He looks less like a monarch and more like a melting candle. You flip it. There's a cross on the other side, or maybe a lion. You can't tell. No matter. The tally board awaits. You place it in the counted pile. 1. Only a few thousand to go. Now you might be wondering, did this really happen? Did people really sit and count out coins one by one? Yes, they did. In castles, in monasteries, in merchant guilds, and especially in royal treasuries. There were entire professions built around the counting, stacking, evaluating, and let's be honest, occasionally miscounting of coins. And it wasn't just about quantity. Oh no. Each coin carried its own mystery. Was it real? Was it shaved? Was it the king's currency, or a foreign intruder from Venice or Byzantium? Was the metal pure, or had it been debased? Was it even worth the number stamped on it? You'd learn to feel the difference. To weigh a coin in your palm and know this one's not right. Too light, too shiny, too freshly minted. There was knowledge in your fingers, judgment in your eyes, suspicion in your breath. Because in a world without centralized banks or digital tracking, the coin was the record, the only record. And if someone tampered with it, lied about it, or stole it, the kingdom could collapse into financial chaos. Wars weren't just fought with swords, they were funded with bags of silver. If you didn't count the money, right men didn't get paid. And when men don't get paid, they stop fighting. Or worse, start fighting you. So yes, this mattered. And it was slow, painfully slow. You'd count, then recount, then count again. You'd scratch tallies into parchment or wood. You'd make little stacks 10, then 100, then 1,000. You'd hope the stack didn't topple. You'd pray your numbers held. You weren't alone, though. Usually. There were guards to watch you, scribes to double-check your records, supervisors to question your methods, and thieves. Well, they were always watching too, even inside the castle. Sometimes you'd count under pressure. The king wanted the tally today, now, right before a feast, or worse, right before a tax decision. Other times, you were left alone with the coins for hours, days, even weeks. And every now and then, you'd wonder just how easy would it be to slip one coin into your shoe who would notice. And then you'd remember someone always notices. The treasury is not a place of comfort. It's cold, quiet, and oddly lonely. The coins don't talk back. They don't thank you. They just keep piling up, like silent witnesses to every decision, every war, every tax. Still you count. And with every stack of 10, every bundle of 100, you inch closer to the total. Closer to understanding just how much a kingdom is worth, and how much it costs to know. The sun is still low when you're woken by the sound of boots on stone. A guard unlocks the treasury door, his eyes glazed from too little sleep and too much mead. He grunts and steps aside. You walk in your shoulders already aching from yesterday's tally. Today, like yesterday, is for counting, nothing else. You're a royal coin counter, officially known as a tally clerk or comptroller, depending on the region and the century. A job both feared and pitied. Feared because you handle the king's treasure. Pitied because you do so without much of a life. No songs are written for those who spend their days bent over stacks of coins with wax tablets and tired fingers. But your work is vital. Today, you're working with groats. Heavy silver coins, thick and awkward in the hand. Yesterday, it was deniers. Tomorrow, who knows pennies, florins, bezants? The coins vary not just in value, but in weight, design, and age. Some are newer crisp, proudly bearing the king's most recent likeness. Others are ancient, dull-worn, smooth by decades of trades, pockets, and prayer. You set up your space. A table plain and sturdy. A wax tablet for marking groups of 10. A wooden box for coins you've already counted. A scrap of parchment in case the wax fails. And of course, a knife. Not for defense, for testing. It's not uncommon for false coins to find their way into the royal chest. Some are expertly crafted forgeries. Others are genuine coins that have been clipped edges shaved to harvest silver, leaving the coin ever so slightly underweight. You've trained your thumb and index finger to feel that difference. You tap, flick, test the sound. A pure coin sings, even if only faintly. A false one, dead silence. You begin. Stack after stack. 10 coins. Tap, stack. 10 more. Tap, stack. You develop a rhythm almost musical. It's meditative at times, a kind of metal lullaby. Then your wrist cramps and the illusion breaks. A steward enters. His robe is clean, his shoes polished. He's never touched a coin with dirty hands in his life. He drops a leather bag on your desk. Lord Winmar's tax payment, he says. They say it's correct. You look at the bag. It slumps like a drunk. Always a bad sign. Carefully you untie it. Inside a mess, coins of different types, some dull, some shiny, and several that shouldn't even be here. A Venetian grosso, a Moorish dirham. These aren't legal tender. You hold one up, let it catch the candlelight. Did they think we wouldn't notice, you mutter? The steward shrugs. They always hope. You sigh and start over. Part of your job isn't just counting, it's sorting, validating, rejecting. You have to know which coins are accepted in which towns. Some lords issue their own currency, local and crude. Others pay in imported gold, hoping the king won't notice. You notice. You always notice. You think back to the lessons you were taught as an apprentice. How to distinguish a Saxon penny from a Norman one. How to identify the subtle ridge on a clipped coin. How to smell counterfeit lead masked with tin. Yes, even smell plays a role. Lead has a scent bitter and metallic, different from silver. You learn to sniff money before you even had any. As you work, others come and go. A scribe arrives to record your progress. You dictate the tallies, and he writes them down with meticulous strokes, occasionally blowing on the ink to dry it. Behind him, the royal auditor looms. A pale man with a permanent frown, he watches you like a hawk looking for errors, inconsistencies, or signs of favoritism. Your fingers are blackened by metal dust. Your sleeves smell of wax and sweat. You are cold, hungry, and bored, but you cannot afford to be careless. Because if your final count is wrong, if even a single penny goes missing, you could be accused of theft. The punishment. Not a slap on the wrist, not a fine, imprisonment, mutilation, or worse. The king does not like discrepancies, but you endure. You keep counting. Sometimes to stay sane, you imagine stories for the coins. This one came from a battlefield tucked in a soldier's boot. That one was tossed in a beggar's bowl, then stolen back. That gold florin. Surely it crossed an ocean in a merchant's chest, exchanged hands in a smoky tavern, and ended up here by accident or fate. Coins are not just money, they're time pressed into metal. Each one has passed through hands, lives, moments, and now they pass through yours. You pause. Take a sip of watered ale, the only thing the treasury allows you besides your counting tools. You let your eyes close for a moment. Your shoulders slump. Then you reach for the next bag, the next pile, the next piece of the kingdom's fortune. And the day begins again. You think you've gotten used to the sound, the gentle metallic clink of coin on coin. But it changes. Every type of coin has its own note, its own voice. Some are dull and tired like old men grumbling. Others ring sharp, high like a bell in a frostbitten churchyard. And some the ones made with purity, intention, and pride they sing. Not all coins are created equal, not even close. Before you can count coins, you need to understand what you're counting. What is a coin really? A hunk of metal, a tiny badge of royal approval, a promise, a threat. Let's start at the beginning. In the medieval world, coins were cast or struck by hand. Picture a smelting pot of glowing molten silver, a pair of iron tongs gripping it like a squirming animal. The hiss as it hits a mold, the clank as it cools into a blank disc. Then comes the stamp, literally. A coin die is hammered onto the blank, imprinting the king's face, his title, his authority. One swing of the hammer, sometimes two. No room for error. A misstrike can ruin a coin, or more dangerously create confusion in the realm. Because in this world, a coin is not just currency, it is power you can hold. You, the royal counter, know all of this. Because every flaw, every inconsistency might reveal fraud or mischief. You can tell where a coin was minted by the shape of the cross on the back, by how detailed the beard on the king's face is, by the subtle alignment of letters. The more powerful the king, the more standardized his coinage. A uniform coinage meant a unified realm. A broken, scattered set of mints, each issuing its own designs and values, that meant rebellion, disunity, chaos. Take England, for instance. King Edward IV introduced strict reforms to coinage. Before him, the coins were inconsistent, clipped and often forged. Afterward, a uniform silver penny with careful inscriptions, the king's stern face staring back at you like he knew what you did last summer. Each coin not only held value, it was value backed by the authority of the crown. But of course, this was only true if the people believed it. Some coins were made with less silver than promised. Debased, they were called. Still officially worth the same, but lighter in the hand, and often met with suspicion. If the crown issued too many of these, inflation crept in like a slow poison. Bread prices rose, merchants complained, and sometimes people refused to accept the coins at all. When that happened, riots weren't far behind. So when you, the coin counter, lift a piece from a tax bag and hold it to the light, you're doing more than weighing metal. You're measuring trust, stability, the very pulse of the kingdom. You set the coin down. You reach for the next one. This one's different, thinner, lighter. It bears a king you don't recognize. You squint. The inscription is Latin but garbled. A foreign mint perhaps, or a forgery. You bite it gently. Yes, people really did that. Not to test for gold, that's a myth, but to feel the resistance. Pure metals are softer. Lead is too soft, tin too brittle. The right bite can sometimes tell you more than a scale. You make a note, unfamiliar coin, possible foreign origin. The steward will need to investigate. This happens often. Even in a centralized kingdom, coins travel. Traders bring them from Venice, Byzantium, Morocco. Some are accepted, others not. And some sneak into royal tax payments by lords, hoping you won't notice. But you notice, because coins carry stories. And you, humble as you may be, are one of the few allowed to listen. As the day goes on, you organize the coins by type. Silver pennies here, gold nobles there. A tiny stack of farthings so small and light, they feel like playthings. Each stack tells you something about the people who paid them. A chest of silver from a wealthy abbey, a mess of copper from a border town, a mix of everything from a merchant who traveled too far and bartered too hard. There's a rhythm to it now. Lift, examine, stack, note, repeat. The clink becomes your heartbeat, the wax tablet your conscience, the piles of coins your temporary kingdom, and you rule it by touch. You glance up. The steward has returned, eyes scanning the room like a hawk denied dinner. Well, he asks. 3 foreign coins, you say. 2 clipped, 1 forged. He raises an eyebrow. And the total, you hand over your count. He nods, then leaves. No praise, no thanks. Just duty. That's fine. Because tomorrow you'll be back here. And so will the coins. Waiting to be heard, waiting to be counted. You never really finish counting coins, not truly. For every bag sealed and every tally recorded, another arrives. A shipment from the port, a tithe from a distant baron, a box marked urgent and suspiciously sticky with old wax and seawater. The king's money doesn't sit still. It moves, multiplies, disappears. And you lucky you get to follow its trail. This morning you're working with gold, not common, not peasant pennies or merchant silver. Gold, real rich heart-stopping gold. Florins, ducats and nobles, each coin heavier than it looks, warmer to the touch, as if the sun itself were trapped inside. These are not everyday coins. They are prestige in circular form. You run one between your fingers. A Florentine florin, you guess. You've seen them before, just rarely. Italian traders love them. The Lily of Florence on one side, St. John the Baptist on the other. Imported wealth, clean and precise. worth enough to buy a small farm or bribe a large judge. You compare it to an English noble, larger, thinner, bearing the king's face in profile. Both gold, both dazzling, but one tells of commerce and the other conquest. You count slowly, reverently. The value here is staggering. A single chest of gold could fund a small war, or build a cathedral, or disappear entirely into the wrong hands, never to be seen again. And that's the real danger of gold. It's not just money, it's temptation. You think about that sometimes. What it would take to slip one coin out of a sack, tuck it under your tunic, walk away. No one would notice. Not today, maybe not tomorrow, but they'd notice eventually. Because when it comes to gold, someone always keeps track. You shake off the thought and keep counting. But it's a fair question. How did people keep track of all this? In the early days, records were etched into wax tablets or scratched into strips of parchment. Monks and scribes would record entries in neat Latin columns, crossing themselves when the sums grew too large. Tally sticks were also common pieces of wood split down the middle, each side marked with notches to represent value. One half stayed with the king, the other with the lender. Neither trusted the other to remember correctly, so they let the stick remember for them. And no, they didn't use Arabic numerals, not yet. The zero hadn't quite caught on. So Roman numerals ruled the page, making every account look more like a riddle than a ledger. 8 plus x sum serve equals what? Best hope your scribe didn't sneeze and turn a V into a Y. Mistakes were common, but punishment for mistakes, often severe. You knew one man years ago who miscounted a shipment from the wine tax. He insisted it was the merchant's fault. The numbers didn't add up. The scribe made an error, but in the end it didn't matter. The treasury lost coins, and someone had to answer for it. He lost 2 fingers. Now when you count carefully. The gold glows faintly in the candlelight. Even in low light it shimmers like it knows it's better than silver. You place another coin on the stack, and another, but something's off. You hold one up. The color's wrong. Too pale. Too light. You test the weight. It feels off. A whisper too soft. You scrape the edge with your knife. Beneath the golden surface, copper. A forgery. You report it immediately. The steward frowns and records the name of the town the chest came from. We'll investigate, he says, which is code for someone's going to be asked very direct questions under very dim lighting. You go back to counting. Gold always draws forgery. It's too valuable not to try. Even in the king's own mint, sometimes the temptation proves too strong. There have been scandals, whole batches of underweight coins released, the alloy weakened with cheaper metals. Sometimes it's sanctioned quietly. A desperate king, a looming war, a need to stretch the treasury without admitting it. Those coins are called debased. They look almost the same, but people can tell. Merchants start charging more. Farmers demand silver instead. And eventually even the peasants learn that gold doesn't always mean what it used to. Trust once broken is hard to buy back. And you, poor soul, are the one who must sort through the fallout, weighing coins, spotting fakes, watching a kingdom's financial credibility wobble one clipped coin at a time. Still you count, because it matters. Because this gold, the real gold, this is what pays the army, feeds the court, bribes the pope, holds the kingdom together. Without it, everything falls apart. So you stack it, mark it, guard it. And when the candle burns low, you blow it out, brush the dust from your hands, and lock the door behind you. Gold sleeps better than men. By now, the sound of metal against metal is as familiar to you as your own heartbeat. But today is different. Today, you're not just counting coins. Today, you're being watched. The king's accountant has arrived. He doesn't announce himself. He doesn't need to. You smell him before you see him, a blend of beeswax parchment and the faintest trace of fear. Not yours. His. A man who lives so close to power always carries a shadow of terror, like a candle too close to a draft. He stands at the edge of the treasury, arms folded, eyes scanning the room. He doesn't speak for several minutes, just watches, notes, judges. Then finally he approaches. You're the one who flagged the Florentine forgery. You nod, unsure if it's a compliment or a trap. Good, he says. That's what we pay you for. He doesn't smile. He doesn't blink. He kneels beside one of your finished stacks, picks up a coin, examines it. You counted this bag as 117 groats. You glance at your notes. Yes, sir. 117. 30 clipped. 2 suspect. The rest sound. He places the coin back with almost religious care. Proceed. And just like that, you're dismissed without leaving. Because this man, for all his quiet demeanor, holds more power than you, than most lords even. He is the king's purse, the human ledger, who knows exactly how much silver flowed in from the Welsh mines, how many florins arrived on Venetian ships, and how many ducats were siphoned off to bribe border guards during the last campaign. He's also the man who signs your pay. That is assuming the books balance. You resume your counting with greater caution. Not fear exactly, but awareness, like walking a tightrope across a vat of boiling pitch. One misstep and you're not just out of work, you're out of fingers or freedom. As you work, he walks, notices things others don't. Who counted this sack? He asks, pointing. A younger clerk raises his hand, barely more than a boy, eager, too eager. Your counts are off, the accountant says flatly. By 3, possibly more. The boy stammers. I double-checked, sir. It must be, the accountant interrupts that you don't know the difference between a clipped coin and a clean one. The silence that follows is colder than stone. Correct it, he says, or I will. And then he walks on. This is the other side of your job. It's not just coins that get weighed. It's people. The king's accountant is no mere bookkeeper. He is the mind behind the monarchy's money. The quiet voice in the king's ear that says, "Know your grace, we cannot afford another war." Or worse, yes, but only if we raise the salt tax. He's respected, feared, sometimes hated. Because while knights win glory and nobles bask in land, he sees only numbers, cold, unyielding numbers. And behind every coin, he sees a consequence, 1,000 silver pennies. That's 10 years of tax from a single village, 20 sacks of barley that won't be eaten, children growing up shorter, thinner, all so the king can throw another feast. And yet he never protests, never complains, because it is not his job to make policy. It is his job to count it. That's the secret no one tells you about coin counting. It's political. Deeply, every coin you tally is a silent nod to something else. A choice, a policy, a punishment, a bribe, a reward. You pick up another groat, place it in the pile. Your back aches. Your fingers are sore. You've counted thousands today. And yet the chest still isn't empty. You glance up. The king's accountant is leaving. He pauses at the door, turns slightly. You're thorough, he says, and then softer. Don't get clever. And with that, he's gone. You're left alone again, just you and the coins. They're quieter now somehow, as if even they are waiting for what comes next. The candle flickers, not dramatically, not like in the stories where wind means ghosts. No, this flicker is real mundane and deeply annoying. You lean in to adjust the wick smear of soot on your fingers and keep going. You're counting in the dark now. Well, not complete darkness, but close enough. There's something oddly intimate about this hour. The castle sleeps, or pretends to. The guards hum to themselves, their armor creaking like tired bones. The mice have grown bold, scratching near sacks of grain behind you. And still, the coins await. You count under candlelight, not for romance or nostalgia, but because sometimes the work never ends. Deadlines loom, audits threaten, and the king, God bless his moody highness, wants his numbers before morning. So here you are. The candle dances. Shadows stretch across the stone walls. The flickering light distorts. Everything turns faces on coins into ghoulish grins. One silver penny winks at you like it knows a secret. You ignore it. You're too tired for hallucinations or jokes. You press on. Here's the real problem. There's no abacus, no calculator, not even a standardized set of weights unless you brought your own. Medieval accounting is guesswork with dignity, and dignity, like wax, runs thin when it gets too warm. You use your fingers primarily. 10 coins, 1 tally mark. 5 tally marks cross that and make a new set. Then count those. It's math, but not the kind you'd teach in school. It's primal, sensory, muscle memory more than mathematics. In front of you are 5 distinct piles, counted and clean. Counted but clipped, suspect, foreign, utter garbage. That last pile is growing. A coin with a hole drilled through it. Someone wore it as a necklace. Not valid. A bent piece of bronze pretending to be a denier trash. Something with a lion so deformed it looks like a goat. Probably minted during a rebellion. Or by someone with poor eyesight and a strong sense of optimism. You put your knife to a particularly shiny coin. Scratch. Gold flakes like old paint. Underneath tin. You sigh. Another forgery. There's a pile of wax tablets beside you now covered in marks. Some are neat. Others look like the scribbles of a man slowly losing his grip on sanity, which to be fair is accurate. Because the longer you count under this flickering light, the more the coins seem to multiply, or shift, or judge you. You blink hard, shake it off. You reach for the wine bottle not for drinking. That's forbidden while on the job, but for pouring a few drops on your hands, rubbing away the grime. You pause, letting the coolness sink into your skin, letting your wrists relax. The candle spits once more. Counting under candlelight isn't just difficult, it's dangerous. Mistakes happen more easily in the dark. A 3-penny coin mistaken for a 6. A clipped groat accepted as clean. One slip and the numbers fall apart. One mistake and you'll be asked very directly to explain yourself to someone who thinks math is a kind of blacksmithing. You recheck your last tally. 982 silver pennies, 100 suspect, 16 clipped, and 1 that isn't here. You frown. Count again. Still 1 missing. You check the floor. There it is, rolled under the bench. You reach down. The stone is cold against your knuckles. You grab the coin, hold it to the light and pause. It's not silver. It's gold. A rogue noble. A bribe tucked where it shouldn't be. A mistake or a test. You set it aside. Quietly. Carefully. When you're this deep in the work, you learn not to ask too many questions. Especially at night. Especially when no one else is supposed to be in the room. A voice coughs from the hallway. Still at it, the guard asks, peering in. You nod. He chuckles. The king should give you a medal. You resist the urge to say I'd prefer a pillow. But the guard is kind enough to refill your candle. A fresh stub, thick and slow burning. The room brightens. The coins glisten again, less sinister now. You return to your work. The hours stretch. But so does your resolve. Because here, under flickering light, surrounded by silent silver and distant footsteps, you are part of something ancient and strange. Not a warrior, not a noble, but a watcher of wealth, a keeper of trust, a servant of the kingdom who counts, so others don't have to. Let's talk numbers. Specifically, let's talk about how medieval people hated them. Not in theory, of course. They loved what numbers could do, track taxes, measure fields, calculate tolls. But when it came to using them, that was another story. You, dear coin counter, live in a world before numbers were simple, before place value, before the number 0 became common knowledge. What you have instead is a mess, a beautiful, chaotic Roman mess. Today your ledger reads DCCLX 784. You had to counter that using letters. Roman numerals D for 500C for 100L, for 50X, for 10V, for 5I, for 1. Combine, subtract, shuffle. Hope you didn't misread a C as a poorly written L, and don't even get started on subtraction. XC is 90, but CX is 110. One is minus the other plus. Good luck. It makes you nostalgic for a time that doesn't exist. Now imagine adding those numbers, multiplying them, dividing them, with no calculator, no algebra, just chalk, parchment, and your poor aching brain. And don't expect an abacus to save you. Contrary to popular belief, abacuses weren't as widespread in Europe as we like to imagine. Maybe in merchant cities, Florence, Genoa, but in your castle at your desk. You're more likely using tally marks, simple charts, or even strings with knots to keep track. You run your finger along the edge of your wooden board, 20 notches, each one a group of 10. Once a row fills you, scratch across and start another. It works, slowly, clumsily, but it works. And heaven help you if someone changes the currency system midway, which by the way they do. Take England, 12 pence make a shilling. 20 shillings make a pound. That's 240 pence to the pound. Try dividing that by hand while cross-eyed from candlelight and see if you don't consider becoming a monk. Oh, and there's no decimal point, no commas, just raw numbers like an endless parade of frustration. You scratch your head, do the math again. Is that chest of coins 387 shillings or 386 and 11 pence? Did you carry the right number when converting florins to local silver? Your mind spirals briefly into a pit of doubt. And then there's the constant fear of human error. Because if you get it wrong, if your numbers are off, even slightly, someone will notice. Someone always does. And in a world where math is mistrusted, mistakes aren't seen as innocent. They're seen as deception, fraud, or worst of all, witchcraft. Yes, really. In some corners of the kingdom, those who were too good with numbers were regarded with suspicion. You with your ledgers and your knowledge of currency conversions might be safer than a hedge wizard, but not by much. So you learn to be careful, meticulous. You cross-check everything, count twice, record thrice, burn no bridges, leave no tally unmarked. Eventually your brain adapts. You stop thinking in numbers. You start feeling them. You learn that 100 groats feels like 5 good fistfuls. that 30 clipped pennies weigh slightly less than they should, that a coin that doesn't echo when dropped might be hiding a trick. This is medieval math, not taught in schools, but lived. You glance over your latest tally. It's right. You know it. Because the piles are neat, the math matches, the ink is dry, and your intuition agrees. You take a moment to appreciate that, to admire the way your brain, stubborn and sleep-deprived, has forged a relationship with numbers that's half logic, half alchemy. And then you count again, just to be sure. Because in this world, certainty isn't a luxury. It's your shield. Some days the coins whisper lies. You pick up a silver penny, feel its weight, glance at its faded markings, and you know, something isn't right. It's too thin, too smooth. The ridges, once sharp, have been softened. Welcome to the oldest con in the book, coin shaving. Also known as clipping, this little act of monetary mischief plagued kingdoms like a stubborn rash. The method was simple, effective, and maddening. Shave a sliver off the edge of every coin. Just a bit, not enough to be noticed right away. But if you did it to hundreds, thousands, you'd gather enough silver to mint new coins, buy a sheep, or disappear into another town before anyone asked questions. And now here you are, staring at a pile of shifty coins that feel more like paper than power. You sort them into their own stack, clipped. Fraudulent, yes, but not always forged. The faces are real, the marks are genuine, but the value, hollowed out. This is where your job becomes more than counting. It becomes policing, investigating, discerning who might have trimmed the king's treasure and when. Sometimes it's a merchant, other times a desperate priest, occasionally a rogue mint worker who understands the system a little too well. And once it was another tally clerk, a friend even, or so you thought. You remember the day he was caught. The king's accountant had reviewed the books and found discrepancies. Tiny ones, barely noticeable, but consistent. Too consistent. They searched his quarters, found a pouch of clipped edges curled like silver fingernails. His explanation was poor. His fate was worse. A public trial. A private punishment. Now every time you spot a clipped coin, you think of him. Of the line he crossed and how thin it really was. But coin shaving isn't the only trick. There are swaps too. Imagine this: a noble pays his taxes in gold ducats. You count them. They're all there. You lock the chest. But later, someone swaps a handful for gilded forgeries. Still gold, but not quite. Not real. Or worse, they swap gold for silver. Or silver for lead. It's the same weight, maybe even the same shine. But a month later, the treasury discovers the theft, and the blame traces back to whoever sealed the chest. You. That's why you count twice, sometimes 3 times. And why every chest is sealed with wax, bearing your mark, your thumbprint, your reputation. But not all tricks are external. Sometimes the numbers lie. Or rather, they're made to lie. Ever heard of ghost soldiers? It's an old scheme. A noble claims he has 300 men in his retinue. He receives coin for their pay, but in truth, he commands 200. The rest exist only on parchment. Phantom soldiers with empty bellies but very real pay. The excess coin vanishes. The trick almost undetectable. Until someone like you realizes the king's silver is running dry faster than the ledgers suggest. So you audit, you investigate, you cross names, locations, dates, and you risk your neck in the process. Because thieves don't like being found. And the line between a clever mistake and a calculated fraud is thin enough to split a coin. Of course, not all fraud is malicious. Sometimes people just don't know better. A farmer pays in bad coins because that's what he was given. A merchant overcharges not to cheat, but because his scales are skewed. A scribe miswrites a number, and suddenly it looks like a castle has too much gold. You learn to tell the difference, to know when deception is a crime and when it's just desperation. After all, you've felt desperate too. The hours stretch long. The numbers blur. The temptation to say close enough hovers over you like a ghost. But you never do. Because in this job, close enough can become close to death. You finish counting the last of the suspect coins. 39 clipped. 6 likely forgeries. 2 you'll need to test with acid. Yes, acid. Vinegar mostly. It reacts with lead, but not with real silver. It stinks. It burns. But it tells the truth. You light another candle. Your hands are dirty, your back is sore, and the coins are still lying to you. But you keep counting, because you're not just protecting wealth. You're protecting trust. And that, in the end, is the only currency that really matters. You lift another silver groat and pause. There it is again, that face. The king's portrait carved into the surface with all the subtlety of a chisel-wielding blacksmith. Stern brow, heavy crown, lion's mane of hair. This coin, like so many others, bears more than value. It bears a message. Coins are propaganda. You realize this the first time you hold one from a rival kingdom. Different face, different lettering, sometimes even a different language. Each one shouts, "This is who rules here. This is whose hand feeds you. This is who controls your bread, your roof, your future." Before the printing press, before newspapers, before royal decrees could be pinned to public doors, coins were the kingdom's loudest voice. The king's face was stamped not for beauty, but for belief. Every coin was a miniature campaign poster, a daily reminder in your hand, in your pocket, in your bread transaction, that the crown sits heavy and unchallenged. Even illiterate peasants knew their monarch's face, not from portraits or paintings, but from pennies. And it wasn't just the face. Flip the coin over and you'll find symbols, crosses, lions, eagles, saints, ships, swords, heraldic beasts biting each other in mid-air. Every mark meant something. Not just decoration, but assertion. The king's divine right, his military triumph, his noble lineage. Some kings even issued special coins after victories. A new design, a new face, a reminder that the old era had ended and the new one wearing this face had begun. And sometimes when power changed hands quickly, as it often did, the coins changed just as fast. In one corner of the realm, you might still find coins bearing the face of a deposed monarch. They'd be quietly removed, melted down, reminted with the new king's features. Because a coin that bore the wrong face was dangerous. It whispered rebellion. It asked questions. It remembered. You think of all the coins you've seen, some pristine fresh from the mint, others battered faces, rubbed away details lost to time, but each once was crisp, intentional, part of a royal narrative. This isn't just currency, it's storytelling, and every coin tells a slightly different tale. Some speak of ambition, a young king issuing coins in his first year, his chin too smooth, his crown too large. Others of desperation, coins hastily minted during a siege, metal-thinned stamps, crooked messages garbled. The treasury scraping the bottom but still shouting, "We are strong, we are unbroken." You've even seen coins that lie outright. One especially memorable piece claimed a king was king of all England, Ireland, and France. France. They barely held Calais. But the coin didn't care. It wasn't reporting facts. It was projecting power. And sometimes that was enough. You rub the groat between your fingers. The face is clear. The letters bold. The reverse bears a cross-pate, thick geometric unmistakable. A mark of the mint at Canterbury, if you recall correctly. You stack it with others of its kind. One more voice in the royal choir. Somewhere deep in the castle, the king probably holds one of these very same coins. Not to spend, just to feel. To remind himself, this is mine. This kingdom. These people. Their money. Their faith. Coins are the only portrait of the king most people will ever see. They are the handshake he never made. The law he never spoke aloud. And when they falter, when the metal is thin, the stamp is weak, or the message confused, so too does the sense of royal certainty. A strong coin makes a strong king. At least that's the idea. And you, royal coin counter, are the guardian of that idea. Your hands ensure that every face, every mark, every story printed in silver rings true. You pick up another coin, another face, another whisper of power, and you listen. Imagine the noise. The mint is not a quiet place, not by any stretch. It roars with fire and clangs with iron. Smoke coils in the rafters. Men shout. Hammers fall. Metal groans. You step inside and it hits you all at once. The furnace heat the ash, the acrid tang of molten silver in the air. This is where it begins, where coins are born. Not in treasure chests, not in counting rooms, but here on anvils between dies in sweat and soot and sound, the royal mint. As the coin counter, you're not usually summoned here, but today is special. The king's accountant wants you to verify a batch rumors of underweight coins have begun to spread. And so here you are, clutching your parchment, stepping over piles of slag, trying not to gag on the scent of overworked tallow. At the far end of the hall, the master of the mint greets you with a nod and a grimace. He's an older man with blackened fingertips and the demeanor of someone who knows the value of every ounce and the price of every mistake. Follow. He grunts. You do. The process is simple in theory, brutal in practice. First, they melt the metal silver or gold, depending on the day's work. It arrives in crude bars, sometimes mixed with other metals, always inspected with suspicion. It is weighed, tested, and judged. Then it's heated until it flows like syrup, glowing and angry. Poured into molds to create blanks, flat, featureless discs. Those are cooled, polished, and handed to the press team. The real magic happens here. One blank is placed between two engraved dies, one bearing the king's face, the other his chosen symbol. Then the hammer swings. Once, maybe twice. Clang. A coin is born. You step closer, watch it happen. Clang. Another face caught in silver. Clang. Another promise sealed. It's hypnotic, violent, precise. The coin is plucked, inspected, tossed into a pile. Then another blank. Another swing. Another echo. The rhythm is so constant it becomes a chant. But not all coins make the cut. Some are off-center, others too thin. Some crack under the force or stick to the die and warp. Those are tossed aside, melted again, reborn later. You reach into the finished pile and test a few yourself. One is perfect, clean, sharp, even. The next slightly light. You raise an eyebrow. The master growls, snatches it back. Wasn't from today's batch, he mutters. Leftovers. You make a note anyway. because you know how this works. Mints are places of great power and great temptation. A single underweight batch, if slipped past the checks, can flood the market. Damage confidence, trigger price hikes, panic, rebellion. It's happened before. It will happen again. Sometimes it's not even the mint's fault. The crown might order debasement. A quiet decree: reduce the silver content, but not the face value. Stretch the metal further. Pay for a war. Fund a cathedral. Bribe an ally. It's effective. It's also dangerous. People notice. They always do. Merchants start biting coins again, literally. Town criers spread rumors. Markets stall. And the king's authority, once minted in metal, begins to rust. So here you are, inspecting each coin, weighing, measuring, listening to their ring. You hold one up. It's different. A trial piece. Not for circulation. Just a test. A new design. The face is younger. The crown smaller. The inscription reads, Dei gratia, by the grace of God. A subtle message. He is king not just by law, but by divine right. You glance at the mint master. He says nothing, just watches. A new era is coming then. And you silent counter just got the first hint. You slip the trial piece into a separate pouch. Noted, recorded, not yet approved. But soon these new coins will flood the realm, and it will be up to you to count them, to judge them, to make sure the king's face means what it claims to. Outside, the hammer falls again. Clang. The kingdom grows one coin at a time. A coin's journey doesn't end in the treasury. In fact, it barely begins there. You know this better than most, because while your world is defined by stacks and tallies, the coin's world is one of travel dirt and constant exchange. Coins move, and they move far. Across valleys and borders, from bustling markets to dusty village fairs, from the hands of soldiers to those of prostitutes, farmers, innkeepers, pilgrims and thieves. You've counted coins that have seen more of the world than you ever will. Take the silver penny lying before you now, faded, scratched, slightly bent. You trace its edge. Someone once bit it hard, testing for purity maybe, or hunger. Where did it begin? Perhaps it was minted in York, from silver mined in Wales, shipped to a royal fortress, then paid to a knight for service in Scotland, dropped during a skirmish, found by a peasant, spent on ale, passed from one hand to the next until it ended up in a merchant's chest, sailed across the channel, paid for spices, returned to port, taxed, delivered, and now here it is, in your palm. Coins, live stories. And you read them like a silent scholar, one coin at a time. You've handled Moorish dirhams with elegant Arabic calligraphy, Byzantine solidi, still gleaming with impossible resilience, Viking hacksilver coins cut in halves and quarters, traded by weight, not by symbol. These are not just intrusions into the king's system. They are history, evidence, proof that the economy is not neat and tidy, but porous and alive. Still, not all coins are welcome. When foreign coins flood the kingdom, trouble begins. Some are accepted unofficially, too convenient to ignore. Others are banned outright. Edicts are issued. Only coins bearing the king's seal may be used. But coins don't listen to edicts. People do. And people like options, especially when those foreign coins are heavier, purer, shinier. You once watched a butcher in a market reject the king's own coin, preferring a foreign gold florin. Said it looked more honest. You understood. And you understood why the royal treasury panicked. Because every time a coin from Venice or Castile is preferred over one minted in Canterbury or London, the king loses something intangible but powerful. Loyalty, trust, relevance. That's why in every tax collection you're told to watch for intruders. Coins that don't belong, that carry strange gods or foreign kings or just too much weight. You sort them into a separate bag, flag them for the accountant, recommend they be melted and reminted. Some are ancient, relics almost. Roman denarii still circulate in remote villages passed down like heirlooms. People don't always understand the difference. A coin is a coin, they say. If it buys bread, what does it matter whose face it bears? But it matters. Because currency is not just about trade, it's about control. You know this every time you handle the latest batch, every time you weigh, sort, stack and seal. You're not just organizing money, you're maintaining borders, cultural ones, economic ones, political ones. And sometimes when you find a coin too strange, too old, too far-flung, you don't mark it for melting. You keep it, just for a moment, to wonder, to imagine the fingers that once held it, to feel the dust of distant roads in the etchings, and then you let it go, back into the flow. Because coins like stories don't stop moving. Not really. Midway through your day, as your fingers blacken with the greasy residue of old silver, a servant bursts through the door. Breathless, pale. The king's war chest, he says. They need an audit. Immediately. You don't ask questions. You don't have time. Within minutes, you're walking fast, almost running through stone corridors, past guards, torches, stained glass, into the royal vault. The war chest sits in the center of the room like a sleeping beast, oak and iron bound, 4 locks, 2 witnesses, 1 sealed letter affixed with red wax already broken. This isn't about suspicion, it's about speed. The king rides at dawn, and he wants to know exactly what he rides with. You kneel, crack your fingers, and begin. The first coins you draw out are silver nobles, not common, worth more than most people make in a season. Thick, beautiful, almost arrogant in their shine. You count, stack count again, then gold. The ducats glint like tiny suns, their weight undeniable. These aren't meant for paying soldiers. These are for bribing foreign generals, buying silence, securing passage. Next, the heavy mix copper for footmen, silver for the archer's coinage with the king's face worn half off. The ones that will end up buried in mud, in blood, or at the bottom of a wineskin in some makeshift tavern tent. You make tallies fast, faster than you like. You double check, triple check. This isn't the time for meditation, it's triage. Because the war chest isn't just treasure, it's logistics, it's planning. It's the kingdom's bloodstream before a battle. And unlike your usual treasury work here, every mistake costs more than embarrassment. It could cost lives. You flag a stack of clipped coins. Nothing dramatic, just enough to raise an eyebrow. Possibly a careless exchange. Possibly someone siphoning from the inside. You note it, quietly. Later, someone else will trace it. Then you open the side compartment. You hesitate. It's not coins, it's seals. Dozens of wax tablets, each with the insignia of local lords, merchants, religious orders. Promises of payment, debts owed, favors called in. IOUs in essence, but medieval ones. These are just as valuable, sometimes more, because you can't feed an army on promises, but you can start a war with them. You stack the tablets, record them, memorize a few of the seals, then back to the coins. You find one that makes you pause, a French AQ. bold, defiant, heavy as a threat. How did that get in here? Perhaps a trophy, perhaps a message. You note it, mark it, then tuck it aside. Not to hide, just to protect. Some things need closer eyes. Finally, the count is complete. You rise, knees cracking, eyes dry. You hand the parchment to the steward. He doesn't speak, just bows and hurries off. You exhale. The king will ride with a full purse. He'll pay his men. He'll bribe his spies. He'll make war not just with steel but with silver. You, however, stay behind, because your war is different, slower, but no less dangerous. You glance back at the war chest, now sealed, now ready, and already lighter than it should be. Some coins are cursed. Not in the fairy tale sense, not in the way peasants whisper about haunted gold buried with ancient kings, but cursed in their consequences, tainted by the blood they bought, marked by the betrayals they paid for. Some coins, when you hold them, feel heavier than they should, as though they remember. You hold one now, a gold bezant, Byzantine in origin. Its face bears Christ enthroned. The reverse shows the emperor long dead, long forgotten by your kingdom, but still shimmering with divine authority. It shouldn't be here. This coin wasn't minted in England, or France, or even Rome. It came from Constantinople, and not recently. You found it buried at the bottom of a tax chest. No record, no explanation. It looks untouched by time, yet you know it's older than your king, possibly older than his grandfather. You rub your thumb across it. It's cold, perfect, out of place. Coins like this don't just arrive. They travel by desperate hands, carried in hidden hems, smuggled in jars of olives, forgotten maybe, then rediscovered, used in a moment of need, when someone chose to ignore the strangeness of its face in exchange for its weight. You don't log this one under foreign. You make a separate note, because it's not just a coin, it's a story, a warning, maybe even a relic. You place it in a pouch by itself. Some things shouldn't mix. Then you return to your work, because if there's one thing you've learned, it's that every coin carries ghosts. Some are mundane, traded 1,000 times, worn down by honest toil. But others are soaked in sin. You remember a batch of silver pennies paid in a quiet village. The steward handed them over with shaking hands. They looked clean, perfect even, too perfect. You tested one, pure silver, crisp lines. The king's face unweathered as though it had never been touched. That was the clue. Coins in circulation always wear down. They scrape together, chip, fade. These had not. You asked questions and discovered the source, a hidden forge, illegal, run by a rogue noble who'd struck his own version of the king's coins, almost indistinguishable, minted from silver taken from church plate, consecrated silver, melted down to buy grain, feed soldiers, and eventually pay taxes. It had worked until you noticed. That entire chest was confiscated, the forger executed. The village watched ever since, because cursed or not, coins reveal everything. The rise of counterfeiters, the fall of trust, the desperation in the provinces, the greed at court. Even the king himself isn't immune. You once overheard a noble murmuring, "You can tell the king's mood by the thickness of his coins." A thinner coin meant war was coming. A fatter one, peace, or peace's illusion. Because every time the kingdom needs money, real money, it turns to its coin. Tax it, debase it, borrow it, steal it. Coins pay for parades and poison alike, so you count with care. You memorize their faces. You learn their moods. You catalogue the ones that feel wrong, not because they weigh differently, but because they remind you of something you can't quite place. A death that never made the scrolls, a secret carried in metal, a payment never meant to be uncovered. You finish the stack, you seal the bag, and you whisper not aloud but in your mind a small prayer, not for yourself, but for the next person who touches that cursed coin. You didn't choose this life, not really. Who would? No child dreams of becoming the king's counter. No bard sings of ledger keepers or tally marks. There are no ballads for balancing the treasury. And yet here you are. You think back to how it started. You were young, curious, too curious. You'd shown a knack for numbers, for order. You could remember debts in your village better than the elders. You corrected your father once when he tried to shortchange the tax collector, not out of mischief, but because you couldn't stand the math being wrong. The collector noticed. So did his lord. And one day, without ceremony, you were offered a place in the steward's household. You'll learn things they said. They didn't mention the ink-stained fingers, the sleepless nights, the fear. You started as a ledger boy, holding candles, fetching wax, running figures between rooms, listening, always listening. Then came the tests. They'd hand you a sack of mixed coin and say, "Count this." They'd lie to you. Mix in foreign pieces, slipped weights, test your eye. You passed. Not because you were the best, but because you never assumed anything was what it claimed to be. That was your secret. Cynicism dressed as diligence. In time you were trusted with ledgers, with vault keys, with your own seal. And now you sit alone in the counting room, master of coin but not of comfort. Because no matter how far you rise, you are still just one breath away from ruin. One miscount, one accusation, one scandal. You've seen it happen. A noble falls from grace. His steward is arrested. His coin counters questioned. Always. Because someone must answer for the missing silver. It is never the one who ordered the war or the feast or the tournament. It is the one who failed to count it correctly. You rub your temples. The room is quiet for once. The coins sleep. You open your logbook. The numbers dance. Always numbers. Endless. But now they carry meaning. You see patterns others miss. This region's tithes are lower than usual, bad harvest perhaps, or corruption. That mince coinage is thinner, new staff or new orders. This lord paid in florins, not groats, an insult. A message. You know the signs now. You've become more than a counter. You're a watcher, a translator of metal into motive, a listener to the language of silver. You look at your hands, rougher now, calloused from Saks ink and endless hours at the desk. You wonder how long you can do this. How long before your memory falters, your instincts fade. There are younger counters waiting, sharper, hungrier. You train them yourself. You tell them the rules count twice. Doubt everything. And never ever forget every coin tells a story, but not every story is true. You close the book, stretch your back. Another day's work done, another chest counted, another whisper from the vaults added to the great chorus of the realm. You didn't choose this life, but now you couldn't leave it if you tried, because who else would listen to the coins? Who else would hear their lies? Who else would care? There's a certain silence that settles over the treasury in the hours just before dawn. Not the tired silence of night, but the stillness of anticipation. Like the kingdom itself is holding its breath. You sit by the ledger, the last candle low. Outside a cock crows in the distance, impatient. Soon the palace will stir. Servants will clatter down stone halls, bells will ring, orders will fly. But for now, it's just you and the final tally. You unseal the last chest of the night, not a large one, a tax collection from a southern abbey, mostly silver, a few copper coins, one very grimy gold noble. The coins inside are warm from proximity to each other, as if they've remembered their purpose through sheer contact. You pour them onto the counting table. They spill like a river of weight, of promises, of power. And then you begin. It's slower this time. Not from fatigue, though it clings to your shoulders like a winter cloak, but from reverence. This is your ritual, your final prayer before sleep. You sort, by shape, by weight, by era. One coin stands out, not for its design, but for its absence of one. It's worn completely smooth. Not a mark remains. No face, no cross, no crown. Blank, empty. You've seen coins like this before. So old, so handled, so passed from hand to hand that they've lost their identity. You hold it gently. Some would say it's useless, not worth a penny, but you don't throw it aside. You place it carefully in a small wooden box at your side, your private collection of the forgotten. Coins that once mattered, now quiet, but not meaningless. Because here's the truth. Even the most worn coin was once minted with hope. Maybe it paid for bread, or for betrayal. Maybe it bought a moment of love, or a sentence of exile. Every coin, even this blank ghost, moved the world a little. You finish the stack. Sign your name at the bottom of the tally. Seal the scroll. That's when the knock comes. Not loud, but precise. You open the door. The steward stands there, bleary-eyed. The king wants a summary, he says, before the sun rises. You nod. You expected this. You gather the scrolls, the tallies, the pouches of sorted coins. Then, almost as an afterthought, you tuck the worn coin into your sleeve. A reminder. The palace corridors echo as you walk. The guards salute, barely awake. The great doors to the king's study creak open. He is not alone. The king's accountant stands beside him. Pale, composed, you bow. The king, half dressed in his morning robe, gestures. Well, you speak plainly, clearly. You deliver the totals, the discrepancies, the foreign coins, the clipped pieces. You mention the noble who paid too generously, the village that paid too little, the war chest still intact. You say nothing of the worn coin. When you finish, the king nods once. Fine work, he says without looking up. The accountant meets your eye, says nothing. You leave. Back to your chambers. Back to ink stains and cracked fingernails and dreams of endless copper rivers. You close the door. Slide the worn coin from your sleeve. Place it on the table. Let it catch the dawn light through the shutters. It reflects nothing and everything. You'd think by now you'd be used to the weight. Not just the physical weight of coin sacks, though that alone is enough to break a back, but the symbolic weight, the pressure, the knowledge that every tally you make becomes a spoke in the wheel of power. But today, that pressure tightens like a noose. Because today you're summoned not to the treasury, but to court. Not the regal silken court with harps and hunting dogs. No. This is a courtroom. And you are not a guest. You are a witness. They dress you in clean robes. Someone even combs your hair. But it feels like armor before battle, ceremonial and useless. Your hands still smell like old wax and silver. The chamber is packed. Lords, lawyers, clergy. Everyone with a title and a grievance. At the centre of it all stands Lord Westmere. You know the name. You've counted his tax payments, weighed his silver, noted his patterns, and today he stands accused. Embezzlement, coin forgery, fraud against the crown, heavy words. He doesn't look worried. He should. You're brought forward. You bow to the judge, swear your oath on a Bible so old its spine crackles. Then they ask questions. Did you tally Lord Westmere's payments from the Western marches? Yes. Did you notice discrepancies? Yes. Describe them. You take a breath. They were subtle. A few coins clipped here. A few forgeries slipped in there. At first it looked like random noise, but over the months a pattern emerged. Underweight deliveries, duplicate ledgers, and once a shipment of tax marked as paid but never arrived. And yes, you kept records. You always do. They produce your scrolls. Ink faded but clear. You explain your process. Slowly, carefully. You watch the room fidget. Nobles don't like numbers. They like certainty. They want to know, is he guilty? You don't answer that. You simply say, the numbers didn't add up. And I counted them myself. Lord Westmere scoffs. Are we to hang a nobleman on the words of a clerk? You don't flinch, the judge asks. Are you confident in your tallies? You nod, completely. That word echoes, not loudly, but like a stone dropped in still water. The trial continues. Lawyers drone. Arguments spark. Evidence is flung about like mud. But your part is done. You step back, and you realize something. You're not just a counter. You're a witness. Your ledgers are legal weapons. Your numbers bullets in a war of parchment and prestige. Later that day, the verdict arrives. Guilty. Not execution, he's still a lord after all. But exile, stripped titles, lands seized. The court murmurs. Justice is served, they say. But as you return to your counting room, the air feels heavier than before. Because you know the truth, Lord Westmere is just one of many. And the next thief may be smarter, subtler, quieter. And you'll have to catch them too. With your eyes, with your ledgers, with your loyalty. Even when no one thanks you, even when no one believes you, because someone must watch the coins and the kingdom they carry. Rain taps on the tower window like a fidgeting scribe. You stare out at the grey skyline chimneys, coughing smoke spires slick with moisture, the cobbled yard below turning into a swamp. On days like this, the treasury feels more like a prison. And you, its quietest prisoner. Not because you've been punished, but because in some ways, this role never lets you leave. You return to the counting table. The coin sacks are already lined up. Damp from the storm, they smell faintly of wool and mildew. Taxes from the border regions, you're told. Delivered in haste before the rivers flood again. The first bag is heavy. Too heavy. You open it carefully, only to find a mess of mixed denominations, copper farthings with silver groats, French centimes rubbing shoulders with Scottish merks. A linguistic nightmare, a metallic Babel. You sigh and begin sorting. The copper is pitted as if someone tried to polish it with vinegar and sand. The silver is better, but only just, much of it clipped. Some coins so thin they bend between your fingers like parchment. Who counted this before it arrived here? You ask the steward. He shrugs. They sent a monk, he says. Young, nervous. Of course they did. The border regions always skimming off the top. Always testing the edges of royal authority. Distance dulls the crown's sharpness. Out there, a penny might pass for a shilling if no one dares question it. You begin again. You weigh the groats. You measure the clipped pieces. You inspect the suspiciously shiny coin at the bottom of the bag, a forgery, and not even a good one. Cast, not struck. You file it away. Then something odd. A handful of lead tokens. Not coins, tokens. Used locally, perhaps. Maybe a baron minted his own to pay workers illegal, of course, but common in desperate places. They're stamped with a rudimentary tower design. Crude. Rough. But still organized. A counterfeit economy just outside the law. You make a note. Add it to your list of quiet concerns. Because while the royal mint may craft the kingdom's currency, these border tokens tell a different story, one of necessity, one of improvisation. The king doesn't rule the edges with swords alone. He rules with coins, and when his coins fail to reach others, rise to take their place. You glance at the bag again. Most of the coins are acceptable barely, but taken as a whole, the message's clear trust is fraying. You know what happens when coinage fails. Barter returns. Salt and sheep and favors replace silver. Justice is paid for in grain. Roads go unmaintained. Armies go unpaid. Borders blur. It always begins quietly, with a clipped groat, a forged noble, a handful of tokens minted in desperation. You close the bag. Seal it. Not as accepted, but as in review. Someone will need to inspect the region more closely. Someone with authority. You're just the messenger. But you've learned how heavy that message can be. You rise, stretch your aching back, and look out the window once more. The rain has slowed, but the mud remains. And beneath that mud, hidden in market stalls and peasant pouches, are stories just like these, silent, worn, barely legal, and growing. You return to your table. Another bag awaits. And you begin again. Not all coins are born equal. Some arrive in your hands with foreign faces, unfamiliar letters, and the subtle implication, I do not belong here. You've seen it all. French ecus, Castilian reales, Venetian ducats, Moorish dirhams, even Byzantine thalers, each one a tiny ambassador from another realm, and each one posing a question the ledgers never ask directly. Do you trust this coin? Today, you're dealing with a fresh wave of foreign silver. The coastal ports have been busy merchants returning from far-off fairs and warships, docking with payments from foreign crowns. It's the kind of mixed treasure that makes your job fascinating and dangerous. You spill the contents of the latest chest onto the counting table. Immediately you spot the intruders. A Florentine florin, brighter, heavier, almost smug in its perfection. Several Ottoman coins with Arabic script curling like smoke across the surface. And is that a Chinese cash coin, a square hole in the center, bronze not silver? How it made it here you cannot imagine. Silk Road. Pirate hoard. An oddity tucked into a merchant's pouch out of curiosity. You log it, marvel at it, then set it aside. Not for the treasury, for the scholars, but the rest must be judged. Because in this kingdom, foreign coinage is a gamble. On one hand, it's real metal, sometimes purer, sometimes heavier than your own. Traders love it. Towns on the borders often accept it out of habit or necessity. But legally, the king's coin is law. Anything else is a threat. Because every time a merchant says, I prefer the florin, he's saying something dangerous. He's saying, your kingdom's coin isn't good enough. You weigh the foreign pieces carefully. Some will be accepted, especially those already widely circulated Florentine florins, for example, often pass without trouble. Others will be melted, recast, turned into something ours. And some will be hidden. Because coins tell stories, yes, but some stories aren't meant to spread. You remember the year the silver pennies were debased when their purity dropped, but their face value stayed the same. Foreign coins flooded in then. People trusted the foreign pieces more. Some villages refused royal coin altogether. We take the French stuff, they'd say. At least that buys bread. The king was furious. He issued new edicts, threats, a reward for reporting merchants who preferred foreign silver. You counted those coins yourself. Some were heavier. Some rang truer when tapped. But you burned the reports, not to hide the truth, but because you knew that no amount of laws could restore trust once it had been clipped away like old silver. Now, years later, the problem returns in waves. Peace brings trade. Trade brings coins. Coins bring confusion. And confusion, it brings you. The trusted counter. The one who decides what stays, what's melted, and what vanishes quietly back into the pockets of those who dare to question royal authority. You pick up the Ottoman coin again. It's beautiful, elegant, alien. But you know it won't survive here. You place it in the melt pouch. You hesitate, then take it back out. Slip it into your drawer of curiosities. A secret collection of what doesn't belong but still deserves to be remembered. Because even though the king's face must rule, you've learned that sometimes the best stories are told by the wrong coins. There are coins that come through your counting room that no one wants to talk about. Coins with jagged edges. Coins too heavy or too soft. Coins with markings not just foreign, but forbidden. Today, one of those coins lands in your palm. At first glance, it looks like any other. Rough silver. Oddly shaped. No clear image. But then you feel it, an unusual texture. The engraving is wrong. The weight is close, but not quite right. You rub it clean with the edge of your sleeve. What emerges is a symbol, a serpent coiled around a tree. You pause. That's not a mint mark. It's not a royal crest. It's a sigil. You glance over your shoulder. The chamber is empty. This isn't a coin. It's a token. And not the kind meant for markets. This is secret currency. Used by groups who operate in the shadows, religious outcasts, secret societies, smugglers, even insurgents. They create their own tokens, not to mimic coins, but to send messages, to buy loyalty, to trade discreetly where trust matters more than silver. You've heard rumors. Most counters have. In some coastal towns, they say these tokens buy safe passage on ships that don't dock openly. In others, they purchase silence. You've never seen one yourself until now. You set it aside, carefully. Then you open the next pouch, and there it is again. A second serpent token. Your stomach tightens. 2 is no longer a mistake. 2 is a pattern. You start looking closer, through the entire tax chest. 3, 4, 7 tokens, mixed among real coins, always near the bottom, always with faint traces of candle wax or charcoal dust, likely stored in dark places, traded in darker ones. This isn't tax, it's a message. Someone wants you to see them, or someone was careless. You report the chest. Not everything, just the facts. Undocumented coins, suspicious marks. Recommend further review. You say nothing about the symbol. You don't write serpent or tree, because you're not just a counter today. You're a protector, of whom you're not entirely sure. But you've seen enough coin tricks to know when one isn't about money at all. You slip one token into a cloth and hide it behind a loose stone in your chamber wall. Just for now. just until you know more. Your mind races. What do they mean? A rebellion, a warning, a forgotten faith slipping through the cracks of coinage you want to ask, but asking the wrong question in the wrong place about the wrong coin. Well, you know what that leads to. So you wait, you count, and you listen. Because not all coins speak with clinks and weight. Some whisper, and you've learned to hear whispers louder than war drums. It happens on an otherwise quiet morning. You arrive early as always. The air still carries last night's chill. Your breath fogs in the treasury hallway, and your footsteps echo too loudly. Routine comforts you. Familiar locks, familiar creaks in the floorboards. But today, something's wrong. You see it before you feel it. The latch on your ledger chest is twisted. Not broken, not forced, just disturbed. You stop breathing for a moment, then you open it. The ledgers are still there, all of them. The scrolls, the ink pots, the wax seals. At first glance, nothing's missing, but you know your ledgers the way a monk knows his prayers. You pull the scroll from yesterday border region tallies. The one with the forged tokens. It's been adjusted. The ink is fresh. The numbers altered just slightly. Not enough to raise suspicion, but enough to erase a pattern. Your pulse ticks in your throat like a second clock. Someone has tampered with your work, and not just any someone. Someone who knew exactly what to change. Someone who read your tally and feared what it might uncover. You close the scroll, return it to its place. You do not shout, do not panic. You do what you always do. You count. This time, you count the clues. The only people with access to your room are the steward, the night guards, and your junior clerk, a bright young man with sharp eyes and a quick tongue. Too quick sometimes. You think back. He lingered over that chest, asked about unusual coins, joked about making his own. You dismissed it. Now you regret it. Still there's no proof, just suspicion, gut instinct. And in this job that's not enough. You need certainty. So you create a decoy. You draft a false tally, one that seems innocent, but contains a hidden trap. A pattern only someone paying too much attention would notice. You leave it unlocked. Visible. You wait. The next morning, the trap is sprung. The tally has changed. You check the ink. Still wet. You confront him. He denies it, but his hands shake. His eyes avoid yours. You search his quarters and find them. Not forged coins, but impressions. Clay molds. Early attempts, a diary, notes on weights, mentions of a new order that uses tokens, not taxes. He breaks when he sees the ledgers you brought with you. It wasn't for gold, he says. It was for something better. You don't answer, because there is no better than trust. You hand him over to the steward. Your chest is sealed again. Stronger locks, stricter rules. Your trust, what little you extended, is gone. And now every coin you count carries a shadow. Not from foreign kingdoms, not from ancient forgeries, but from within. You sit back down at your desk, light a candle, open a new ledger, and whisper more to yourself than anyone else again. There's a room below the treasury most people don't know about. It's not hidden, just forgotten. No guards posted. No keys needed. A stone door behind the old mint furnace, worn smooth by generations of soot. You only found it by accident chasing a dropped coin that rolled too far. It disappeared through a gap in the stone, and like all good coin counters, you followed the sound. The stairs are narrow, dust thick enough to write messages in. The air grows colder, damper, like a tomb. At the bottom, a door. And behind it, silence. Not empty silence, though. This kind, the kind that waits. Inside, it's less a room and more a vault. No gold, no silver, just shelves, scrolls, boxes of ledgers so old their seals have fossilized. This is where they keep the records no one wants to remember. The king's treasury before the current king. Coinage from dead reigns. Tax scrolls from lost provinces. Mint ledgers showing shortfalls they never admitted. Coin designs that were rejected, banned, or erased. You light a candle, begin reading. You're not sure why. Curiosity, perhaps. Or maybe something else. Maybe you want to understand how long this has been happening, this delicate dance between coin and power, between trust and doubt. You find a scroll dated a century ago. It details an incident almost identical to yours, a tax chest from the border containing unauthorized tokens, an investigation, a clerk implicated, a quiet execution. The official summary reads, dealt with. Another scroll, different king. This one shows widespread clipping during a famine. So severe they reminted every coin in circulation, burned the old ones, issued a proclamation declaring a new age of purity. The famine lasted 3 more years, the proclamation 3 weeks. You pull a leather-bound ledger from the lowest shelf. Inside a map, marked not with roads or borders, but with coin routes, trade arteries, tax veins. It shows the lifeblood of the kingdom, how money flows. From abbeys to ports, from towns to castles, from mine to mint to market. And in red ink breaks, points where the flow stops, places where coin goes in but doesn't come out. You recognize one, a village in the southern marshes. You counted a chest from there last week. It was short, by just a few groats. You thought it was a mistake. Now you wonder. You realize something in that moment, something cold and hard and true. The kingdom has always been leaking. Your job isn't to stop the leak, it's to measure it, to record it, to ensure the damage doesn't reach the crown. You replace the scrolls, extinguish the candle, climb the stairs. The lost coin is still waiting at the edge of the furnace. You pick it up. It's not valuable, not rare, just round, worn, trusted. You smile and return to your desk. Sometimes you dream in coins, not piles of gold or treasure chests like a greedy merchant might. No, your dreams are quieter, stranger. You see coins falling from the sky like snow. You see them melting into rivers, turning ink black as they flow toward castles made of ledgers. You see faces on coins changing kings, aging and withering between blinks. Some coins bear your face. You always wake up before you can figure out what that means. This morning is no different. You rise with the dawn eyes, crusted head aching. Your dreams already dissolving into the routine. You stretch, wash your face. The basin water's cold. You splash it harder than needed, just to feel something real. Another day of counting. But when you reach your chamber, there's a letter on your desk. Unmarked, no wax. Folded once. You open it. Inside a single sentence, the mint lies. You sit, stare at the page. Not because the message surprises you, but because you've thought the same thing more than once. The last batch of groats had been suspiciously light. The weights almost but not quite off. Not enough to accuse, but enough to doubt. You take the letter, fold it again, and place it in your ledger. Then you walk to the mint. This time no formal summons, no escort. You go as a man with questions. The master of the mint greets you with the usual gruff nod. Another inspection. You don't answer. You go straight to the weighing table. Take 3 blanks from the fresh stack. Weigh them. All 3 pass. Then you take 3 from the approved coins fresh off the press. You weigh them. 1 is light. Not much. Just enough. The mint master frowns. Probably a fluke. The silver's been inconsistent. Since when, he shrugs. A month. 2, you test 10 more. 3 are light. This is no fluke. You ask about the silver supplier. He names a mine in the north. You recognize it. You've seen its ledgers. Profitable. But recently, a sudden increase in output. Too sudden. You dig deeper. The mine's silver has been extended, mixed with tin or pewter. Still shiny, still soft, but not pure. You sigh. The mint hasn't lied. Not directly, but they haven't told the truth either. The worst kind of deceit. The kind that wears a uniform. You return to your chamber. Write a report. It's detailed, impersonal, just numbers, just findings, no accusations. You don't sign your name. Instead, you seal it with wax. Slip it into the accounting box that goes straight to the palace. Then you wait. 2 days pass, then 3. On the 4th day, the silver shipment to the mint is halted. A new mine is contracted. No public explanation is given. But the weights return to normal. You receive no thanks, just a fresh ledger, and a single coin on your desk. A groat. Heavy. Perfect. And taped beneath it, a note, "We noticed." You smile. Not because you're safe, but because you're still being watched. And so are they. The palace is preparing for a festival. The hallways echo with hurried footsteps and shouted orders. Banners are unfurled. Bread is baked. Musicians tune their instruments in corners, their notes drifting through the stone corridors like birdsong. And you are in the treasury counting commemorative coins. Yes, festival coins. Newly minted, fresh as spring. They shimmer differently. Not because they're worth more, but because they're meant to be beautiful. Celebration pieces. Limited run. Royal faces with kinder eyes and inscriptions that boast not of divine right or conquest, but of peace, prosperity, harmony. It's almost funny. These coins will never be used to buy bread. They'll be handed out to nobles, slipped to foreign envoys, collected, admired, and forgotten in velvet-lined drawers. But you still count them. Every single one. Because these coins are not for the people, they're for the story, and every regime loves a good story. You lift a coin. The king's face is younger, smiling. Impossible, really. He never smiles like that. His chin sharper, hair fuller. A different man, practically. Idealized. The reverse shows a dove with an olive branch. Very Roman, very staged. You read the inscription, "In unity strength, in strength peace." Nice sentiment. You test the coin's weight. Correct. You test 5 more. All accurate. Then you find it. Not a flaw. A secret. 1 coin is stamped with an extra mark. Tiny. Hidden near the rim. It's not a symbol of the mint. Not a known die scratch. It's a signature. A craftsman's mark. Illegal technically. Coin engravers are anonymous by law. The coin belongs to the crown, not its maker. But this is rebellion. Not loud, not treasonous, just human. Someone wanted to leave their name even if no one ever knew it. You run your thumb over the mark. Then you place the coin aside. Not to report. Not yet. Just to think. You remember the old coins ones from forgotten kings, lost cities, buried empires. Many are beautiful. Some are terrifying. But almost all are anonymous. And yet each one whispers the hand that made it. The weight, the line, the effort. This mark, it's a whisper too. A quiet declaration. I was here. You place the marked coin in your drawer of curiosities, next to the serpent tokens, next to the worn faceless coin, next to the Chinese cash piece. Together they form their own story. Not the kingdom's, yours. You return to counting, stacking the smiling king, measuring the weight of peace. But in the back of your mind you wonder who is really being celebrated, the king or the idea of the king. You finish the last tally, seal the scroll, and step outside. The palace square is filling with people. Music swells. Bells ring. Children laugh. You watch the sunlight catch on a banner. It flutters, just like a coin turning mid-air. At long last, a delivery arrives that you've been dreading. It's not from a border town, not from a rebellious lord, not even from a failed mine. It's from the royal family itself. A private chest marked with the Queen's seal. No escort, no explanation. Just a note to be counted in confidence. You read the words twice, then a third time. The Queen's seal rarely passes through your hands. When it does, it's usually for ceremonial offerings, gilded plates, tithe records for the chapel, or small endowments to quiet charities. But this is different. The chest is smaller than most, made of dark wood, polished, heavy despite its size. You lift the lid slowly. Inside silk-wrapped bundles. You remove the first. Coins spill out not in stacks, but in handfuls. Silver, yes, but not uniform. Some are royal, others not. Scottish groats, French deniers, old Saxon coins long out of circulation. One is so old, it bears the face of a king dead for 3 generations. None of them are clipped, none of them false. But together they paint a strange picture. This isn't a tax collection. It's a hoard, a private one, carefully curated. You examine the note again, to be counted in confidence, not to be logged, not to be taxed, just counted. You begin. Each coin you weigh, measure, record. You start noticing patterns. The oldest coins are stacked in sets of 3, a deliberate symmetry. The French coins are marked with tiny ink dots on the rim tracking attempts. Perhaps the Scottish pieces are newer, recently circulated. You pause at one coin in particular. It's a ceremonial piece, commemorative, minted for the coronation of the current queen. Rare, few were made. You hold it up to the light. Then you notice something behind the silk lining of the chest. A compartment, hidden. You pry it open. Inside a velvet pouch. Within the pouch, not coins, rings, 4 of them. Gold, simple, identical. Inside each band, the same inscription, "Let none divide the 5th." You stare. What does it mean? A family vow, a hidden alliance. You check the pouch for dust. None. The velvet is clean, the rings recently handled. Whatever this chest is, it's active, used, maintained. You reseal everything, carefully. You write your tally, exact counts, no interpretations, no questions. You do not ask who is collecting these coins. You do not ask why the Queen holds so many currencies. You do not ask about the rings. Because your job is not to question, it is to count. Still, when you return the sealed report, you notice something. The steward who accepts it does not ask for confirmation. He merely bows, says nothing. He doesn't even open it. It will go directly to her. You wonder if she'll read your tally, or if she already knows the numbers. Because some coins are not about money. They are about memory, legacy, insurance, escape. You return to your chamber. That night you dream of the Queen, not on a throne, but standing alone in a forest, dropping coins one by one into a stream, watching them vanish, smiling. And now, at last, the chest. That chest. The one no one speaks of openly, but everyone in the treasury knows exists. The Royal Reserve. Sealed, vaulted, rumoured, feared. It's opened only in times of absolute necessity, plague siege, civil collapse, or transition of power. And today, it's being opened for you. You're escorted not by a steward or a clerk, but by a knight. He says nothing as he leads you down through corridors you've never walked past, walls carved with names of kings and their wars. Through a door behind a tapestry so mundane, so casual, it's practically an apology. Beyond it, a staircase descends. Stone turns damp, then dry again. You arrive. The room is not large, but the chest, oh, the chest is monumental. Black oak banded in iron, wrapped in chains, not for security, but for symbolism. It doesn't want to be opened, and yet here you are. You place your hand on the lid. Feel the chill seep into your bones. The knight nods once. You open it. Inside, not chaos, not gold poured like dragon hoards, but structure, pouches, boxes, scrolls. You begin the final count of your life. First, the coin. Every piece is marked with an extra stamp, a second seal beside the royal one. A crest not from this reign, but the last. And the one before that. These are coins of legacy. Heavier than they should be. Not in weight, in purpose. Next, the scrolls. Not ledgers, letters. Each addressed to a future king or queen. Each bearing advice, warnings, numbers. A personal treasury of knowledge. You do not read them, you count them. 12. Exactly 12. One for each expected successor in the royal line. Then the foreign coin pouches. Dozens of currencies. Some from kingdoms you thought extinct. One from a place across the sea with a coin made of glass. Unspendable, priceless. You record it all. Each coin, each letter, each symbol. And finally you reach the bottom. A bag of dirt. No, not dirt. Ash. The remnants of burnt coins. Failed mints. Rejected kings. Histories erased by fire. You sit beside the chest for a long while. You don't write. You don't count. You just exist. You think of the years. The thousands, no millions of coins you've counted. The faces that passed. The fingers that touch silver and blood alike. You understand now. Coins are not just tools of trade. They are seeds. Some grow into kingdoms. Others into graves. The knight clears his throat. You rise. Seal the chest. Mark the tally. Sign your name one last time. When you return to your room, you place the record in your drawer. And beside it, that worn, faceless coin. The one with no king, no name, only weight, only memory. You set it atop the parchment. And you smile. Not because you're finished, but because your story told in copper silver, and silence is now part of the kingdom itself. So now, dear traveller, we close the ledger. The final coin has been counted, the last chest sealed. The ink still drying carries with it not just the sum of silver and gold, but the echo of lives of kingdoms, of the quiet hands that held it all together. You began this journey in the shadows, fingers numb, eyes strained, tasked with a job that most would call dull. And yet what you held in your hands was never truly boring. Each coin you turned revealed a secret, a shift in power, a broken promise, a quiet hope. Because in the end, it wasn't about the money, it was about meaning. The kingdom doesn't run on swords or speeches alone. It runs on trust, on faith that a coin means what it says, that a tally is true, that someone somewhere is watching the weight of the world carefully, quietly, and without fail, and that someone was you. So as you drift now into sleep, Know this: even the smallest roll can carry the greatest weight. Even the most forgotten face can guard an empire. And even the most worn coin has value if someone remembers it. Let your eyes grow heavy. Let the candle burn low. And let the stories of silver and silence lull you into dreams not of war, not of crowns, but of the steady, endless rhythm of counting. 1, 2, 3. Good night, watcher. You've done enough. Rest easy. Tomorrow the coins will wait. They always do.